Hi everyone, it's Angela De Palma here, the founder of She Simply Impacts, and I'm very excited to welcome you to our first panel discussion series. Today, the topic is empowering authentic confidence for success in business and life. And this is a very sort of important topic for us at She Simply Impacts, which is why we're kicking off with it, because our vision is every woman and child confident and thriving. And what we're doing here at She Simply Impacts is we are supporting women to be heard, supported, and become unstoppable. And so I'm going to hand us over to Sabine Armbruster, who's actually going to facilitate the discussion. Thank you for joining us, and we're excited about what's going to unfold.
I'm excited too, Angela. Thank you very much. So I'm going to start now by asking our panel, and our panel today is Angela, Sashua, Shannon, and Karen. And I'm going to ask you guys first to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself, just very briefly, because we'll discover more as we talk. What you do and what brought you here. Angela, would you like to start?
Sure. So, as I said before, I'm the founder of She Simply Impacts, and I created this because I really believe in supporting women and advancing women on many levels. And a part of our membership is a small donation every month to charities that support underprivileged women and children, which is we've invited Karen Lindsay here along, and she's part of the charity Broken to Brilliant and runs an amazing program called Financial Superwomen, which she'll talk about. So I'm here. I've gathered the group. I've created all of this because I really believe in this. I'm passionate about it, and I really want to do something about helping, a woman on her journey of transformation and impact.
Great. Thank you, Angela. Sashwa.
Thanks, Sabine. And thank you, Angela, for hosting this amazing event. So Sashua Benay is my name. I'm a transformation coach and intuitive mentor, and confidence is central to everything I think we all do and everything that I do in my transformational work in helping business owners break through their ceilings because they don't have the confidence to show up in a way that's going to get them across the line. So whether that's through magnetic speaker training or inner soulful work or actually developing new strategies for their business, it's really about a transformation so they can step into more the wholeness of who they really are, which is far beyond sometimes who we think we are. So that is one of my greatest passions. I've been coaching now for 20 years after escaping the corporate world. And I felt very drawn to come and join Angela with the She Simply Impacts crew, because I feel it's going to be an incredible platform for women to support one another and step into much more of what we all know we're capable of, but perhaps haven't dipped our toe in the water yet to really even see the extent of that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sashwa. Shannon.
Yeah, thank you, Sabina. Well, I'm Shannon Stone. I'm a business and marketing consultant for the last 8 or so years. I've been working one-on-one with businesses, helping them to make more sales, grow their team, and better manage their business from a systems and operations point of view. I love what I do. I love kind of getting to the root cause of the little bottlenecks that are holding businesses back, rather than just looking at the surface level things. And I love being part of the She Simply Impacts community. As soon as Angela told me the vision from the beginning, I think like a lot of the ladies here, they were there from the beginning. So I'm just excited to be on the journey and on the panel today.
Lovely. Thank you, Shannon. Karen, how about you?
So I run an organisation or run a workshop called Financial Superwoman, and that is assisting domestic violence survivors, females only, getting their self back on their right feet, on the right track, so they can make the right decisions. They can have the confidence around making the decisions. And that's how Angela and I met. We had a mutual connection and said, you two need to get together. So I've been really blessed to have Angela come along and offer her support to the participants in some of our face-to-face workshops recently. And obviously I've got to know Angela a little bit more and understand what she's doing with She Simply Impacts. And so, yeah, really keen to be here today and learn, I'm sure, from these other great panelists as the session progresses.
Brilliant. Thank you, Karen. And thank you all for being here. including Faisy and Hayley. Thank you for coming along to listen to this panel. I'm Sabine Armbruster, and I have a business called She Momentum. I'm a business coach, and I work with women in their midlife that are at that stage of life where they need a little bit of a change. They need to focus on themselves, and they need to move forward so that they can actually develop that independence and freedom that they know they deserve and they know they can do. And so I work with them, make sure they focus, and make sure they build a bit of confidence so they can actually develop that business that they want to develop, that they want to be a part of, and then make a difference to the world. And that's why I'm part of She Simply Impact as well, because that's why we're all here. We're all here to make a difference. And that's the beautiful thing about this panel and about this group. So thank you all for being here. The topic for today is confidence. I'm going to start off with asking Angela the first question, and I want you to tell us in your own words what it means to be confident or not confident. How does that affect you as a person?
Sure. So obviously, to me, being confident means becoming unstoppable in your goals. So it means having goals. It means actually having the confidence to step out there and achieve them. And so my journey has been about not having confidence initially. I think on one level, I've always been a confident person. I've always been quite an authentic person. But I think that, like, I was married for 15 years. I was in a husband and wife business team, and I hid behind the confidence of my ex-husband. He was incredibly confident and very charismatic and a great networker, and his skills were amazing. And so it was like, I'll just hide behind him.
And how did that hold you back?
Well, it held me back because I didn't really have goals of my own. It was like I wasn't a me, I was a we. And so I never want to be a we again. I only ever want to be a me. So it held me back because I think I didn't really inquire deeply, what do I want? Like, who am I and what do I want?
I think there's a few people that can probably relate to that. Shannon, did you want to talk to that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I really resonate with Angela saying it's kind of like when you know you haven't had confidence versus when you do have it. I think it's that contrast that really kind of highlights that growth you have in confidence. So for me, it's definitely been the case. Definitely through my business journey, it's something that I developed. And I think we all have to develop on that type of journey as well. So I think confidence is massive. I think it's huge. And whether it comes from personal or professional scenarios, we can't run from it. And I think it's one of those things, the more that you develop it, the more positive it kind of like crosses over into everything that you do.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Karen, you work with a lot of women that probably when they first come to you don't have a lot of confidence. So how do you manage that? Obviously, your focus is financial, but how do you first of all deal with the confidence issue?
I guess really, and you did right, their confidence often is very, very low, along with their self-esteem. And so as much as we are there really from a financial literacy point of view, everybody who participates in terms of part of what I call my financial superwoman team, most of them are mums. They some are domestic violence survivors themselves, others aren't, but we have a level of empathy and we allow the participants to I guess to share at the level that they're wanting to share. But then from that, it is baby steps for them to start to gain knowledge, and from gaining knowledge, then they gain their confidence. And we have women who come back time and time again, just little bits at a time to gain that knowledge and confidence.
And how important is it for you guys to share your experiences? You know, I mean, building trust is a big thing as well. So is sharing an experience part of that?
To a certain level, yes. We have to be very conscious that in a room of survivors, that too much sharing can actually create triggers, and we're not there for that. We don't want to create the triggers. So there is a very fine balance as to how much we share, and when it is appropriate. So we do from time to time have trainings and discussions as the facilitators, so that we feel that we are being able to give our best to our participants who are in the workshops.
Beautiful. Thank you. Sashua, you run a lot of workshops as well, or do a lot of group work. Tell us how obviously when people come into a group, first up, there's a lack of confidence and people are afraid to speak up. How do you overcome that?
I feel in the first instance, Sabina, I really take the time to set the space as a very safe and comfortable environment for people to feel like there is no judgment. There is no comparison. We are all coming into the space completely uniquely. I come very much from a soul perspective. So even beyond the fact that we have these commonalities of being, humans and females and in certain age ranges and all of those things, our journey and our experiences is unrepeatable compared to anybody else. So if we can really honor that uniqueness and honor that space so that people can start to tap into not just this outer world confidence that we talk about, but our inner world confidence. And for me, I believe there's a third layer, which is really our soulful world confidence. And that to me is where we can really gain strength beyond. And many people haven't really taken the leap of faith, I suppose, to explore that side of them. And that can set the tone in a group situation very quickly to create like almost an anticipation of, oh, there's more to me than what I realize. Like there's more to discover. There's like this little superpower that I have inside of me. And all of a sudden the energy can turn quite quickly from something that people might feel like they're lacking to actually that it's undiscovered and it's just waiting for them. So I suppose that's a quick way to change the energy.
How important is community in that situation? To be in a group as opposed to just one-on-one, how big a role does that play?
It's magic, Sabina, and that's really where the magic can begin, because we actually hear from others what they've been experiencing. And as much as we're unique, we can also relate so much. Like we might have different clothes or a different person in the story that we're talking about, but there is that deep oneness and connection when we truly do tap into one another and get past some of those walls that we can all put up. Sometimes we naturally put up walls through defense and through protection and trying to stay safe. But if we can create that environment to go, well, let's really explore what's behind the wall, because we might be able to learn from one another and really create, like it can really turn into quite a joyful, uplifting experience, rather than what sometimes we feel like, oh goodness, I don't even want to peek behind that curtain because it feels a bit overwhelming. There's so much power in doing that together, stepping forward together, so that it's like the community energy, that accumulation of energy brings on the whole for everybody.
Love it. Angela, you have created a community and you are creating more community. Tell us about how your experience with community and why you feel that a community is what you need, or what the people of your community need to build their confidence. How do the two fit together in your world?
Yes, well, it's similar to what Sashua said, because it's basically the thing that we're not alone. Because isolation is such a killer. Because when we're isolated, it really impacts our confidence. It impacts our experience of life. Like it robs us of feeling that sense of belonging. And I think the belonging part is the thing and I'm not alone in this. And then when there's that added thing of psychological safety and that added thing of confidentiality, and as Sashua said, non-judgment, that's real transformation, because you can transform one-on-one, but then once you get the confidence of this group of people behind you and with you, that is catapulting. And so I think if you want to catapult, the group sharing and the group community is the next level.
You do a lot of work with people on branding. We often get told that branding is one of the first things that we need to do when we start a business. I think we've just identified that there's a step before the branding, and that is to build the confidence that you can put yourself out there. So what are some of the first things that you do with people to be able to get them to that point of confidently branding themselves in who they are, with who they are?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the self-discovery piece, because I think that, I specialize in personal branding, which is all about, as Sashua said, the uniqueness about the individual. So it's how to bring your uniqueness as a person into your business credibility. So that's my specialty. And so therefore, how we do that, it depends on the goals. See, everything starts with goals. And so even with personal branding, it starts with the goals. Then it starts with, I guess, your uniqueness and your skills and your passion and what you want to share and contribute. And then who is that for? It's your target audience. So there's a number of things that go into it. But I find that it's the foundational things, like what are your values? What's your vision, your mission, your passion, and what are your core beliefs? And I think that once the people I work with start to really articulate that, then that's a big part of the personal brand piece, because that's what people are buying. They're buying those things.
Shannon, you work in marketing. Personal branding is a big part of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to put yourself out there, and you need to do it confidently. If you don't show that you're confident out there online, then people feel that energy, right? So how do you overcome that? What is it that you help people with in order to get to that point of being able to do that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because as much as I help people and teach people around putting yourself out there, and especially business owners, getting your name and your business and your services out there and how you can help people, I had to go through the exact same thing myself. And I remember from day zero in my business, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be seen online, especially from just some personal experiences and background. I just wanted to just hide away in my business and do my work, and which I think is a very common dialogue that a lot of business owners have. It's like, it's not about me. I just want to help the people that I want to help. So I think really it's about finding everyone's own unique way of putting themselves out there and finding the way that works for that particular person. For some people, I guess getting on video is too much of a stretch. But some people's strengths might be more in the writing or in audio or podcasting or doing interviews, or some people it's networking. So I always like to start with what your particular strengths are or your particular interests are. And the more that you go on, the more that your confidence will develop. And, you can go from someone who wants to be completely behind the scenes and not have your name out there to hopping onto a video or delivering a talk or a presentation. But I don't believe completely jumping in the deep end if that's not for that particular person. It's okay to start with where you are and to work to your strengths, and then just, systematically keep growing your confidence.
Karen, I can see you nodding. You're agreeing with a lot of the things that are being said here. Strengths and interests. Do you find that has a lot to do with confidence with the people that you deal with? Like what are some of the conversations that you might have? And, obviously don't give any details. But, what have you got some stories that a story that you want to tell us in particular of someone that's come on a journey where you've overcome some big barriers and you've seen them flourish?
That is a great question, and I would actually like to hand it to Angela, because my role during the workshops is really just to run around and keep everything moving nicely, and I don't often get to hear the stories, but I know Angela has got the super one that she's already grinning about it, so I'll actually let Angela share that one.
Intrigued. Go on, Angela.
Yes, I went to the Financial Superwomen conference as the business coach, and one of the attendees was interested in, or she had a business actually, and her ex-husband basically stole it from her, and in the process stole her confidence. And so she obviously wanted to rekindle this and get the business back. And so she connected with me. And then because I was working in the government-funded coaching and mentoring program, the self-employment assistance program, I invited her into my program. And so in that program, she worked on her business plan with me. We worked on a lot of stuff together, but fundamentally, she would come into my office at work, and I would say to her, just come into the office and just, work in the office. So she spent a lot of one-on-one time with me. And at the time, she was still living with her ex-husband, and he was still living with the perpetrator. And it was becoming quite unsafe. But so I spent quite a lot of time really getting to the bottom of what was keeping her there. She had these tremendous fears about leaving. And of course, she was afraid of the uncertainty. She had a lot of issues from her country of origin, which was not Australia, and she'd had a lot of trauma around that. And fundamentally, her ex-husband, she felt this like she owed him something. She felt that she owed this guy something because he'd helped her back in her country of origin. And so therefore she had to stay and put up with all his terrible treatment, which was becoming more and more accelerated and quite violent. And so once I really helped her cut that cord, I helped her realize that she doesn't owe him anything, and that although he helped her, she can always be grateful for that, but she doesn't have to continue to suffer and put herself under all this, really suffering because of that. And then once she sort of got the aha moment and she was able to cut that emotional tie, she left him. And because the services won't help the women unless they've left. So if they're still living with the perpetrator, they can't get any help. They can't get money. They can't get somewhere to go. And so it was a really big thing getting her to leave. And so I felt really proud that I was able to not only help her with her business and get that back and help her with her business plan and get her funding from the government so that she could continue with her dream, but that she was able to get out of that relationship. That was incredible.
That's beautiful. And what I'm getting from that, Angela, thank you so much for telling that story. What I'm getting from that is how important community is. And so we've got a couple of communities there. We've got the community that Karen is creating. Angela, you're part of that. You were there for that presentation. And then Karen handed that over to you and your community. And so there's those communities, and there's also the community, probably the beginning of a community that you've created for the client, to get continued support. I think that is the power of community. And I guess for me, the power of community equals confidence. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Sashua, do you have a particular story you'd like to tell us? Like, listening to this story, do you have one that comes to mind for you, where you've helped someone overcome this barrier of confidence, and they've left with this huge smile on their face, and you just know that they're going to shine?
I'd love to share a story, Sabina, because I think we can all take strength from it, can't we? And there was a client that I had worked with earlier this year, and we worked together for 3 months as the minimum of what I normally do. And when she first came to me, we'd known each other for a while, and it was her reaching such a point where she felt like she had nowhere else to go but up. And that was a massive decision for her, because she had been wanting to leave her marriage for over 10 years. And the interesting thing about this story is that there wasn't physical abuse, there wasn't arguments, but there was more of an underlying sense of control and disrespect. And so it wasn't in your face, and you could understand that many people could actually make a decision to put up with that kind of dynamic in a relationship. But she knew on some level that she needed to change the directory of her life, and she wasn't sure how. And so we worked through a process of really understanding what were the conditions that were stopping her from being able to even start to contemplate the idea of leaving, and engage with those things in a way that she could start to see that there was actually a pathway. So that was really the first step, that there was actually a pathway. And then it was a process over time of working with her own inner world of confidence. And the way I work is working with short, powerful techniques, energy techniques, a lot of the time, mindset, intuitive mindset techniques that people can use in their day-to-day lives, so they can start to feel that that pathway is real.
Sashua, do you have a technique or a tip that you can share with us?
Sure. That's exactly the one I was just thinking about, actually. So the situation was that my client, even when she would pass her husband in the hallway, she would be the one to always step out of the way and let him walk through. And even the same with her teenage child, actually. So she was really putting herself in the lesser than situation. And I did teach her a technique which I call the bubble technique. And we took some time to really intuitively and quietly tune into this bubble of energy that's around us all. Now, you can give whatever word to that you like. Some people call it an aura, or it's just a presence, or it's just where you feel like your energy begins and ends. But it's expanding that and making that more solid, and literally imagining the strength of that. So there's a bit of time to take to do that over a few minutes, though. It's not a long period of time. And I said to her, imagine that you have that bubble intact, and we just visualized her walking through the entire house, every room in the house, every space, with that bubble intact. So that was the practice run. What areas triggered her? What areas were more comfortable? What did she feel when she went into those areas with that bubble expanded? And then the task was to actually do that in her day-to-day life. So the next time that she went through the hallway with her partner, that she would practice having that bubble intact and see what happened. And on the very first go, he stepped out of the way and let her through. And that almost was the beginning of the domino effect, is what I would say. Because from there, she actually saw the pathway. She realized it was possible to actually start changing things. And it's been an incredible journey, and she has started the process of leaving her partner, and it's actually become very amicable from a situation that was very not amicable, quite the opposite, to a point where at the end of our 3 months together, and we're still kind of working together in other ways, she said, Sashua, if you'd said to me at the beginning of our 3 months together that I would feel this way about my life and what's possible, she said, I would never have believed you.
It's powerful. It's a very powerful process.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you. Shannon.
You're welcome.
have you got any tips? You come from a very different space to
Mhm.
Sashua.
Mhm.
Do you have any tips, any advice for people that, you know, they're in that business mind? I've got to make some money. I have to, you know, become independent. But you know there's some underlying challenges. What are some
Mhm.
of the tips that you have? What are some of the things that you do with people?
Yeah, thank you. And I love Sashua's. It gives me goosebumps as she was explaining it.
Yeah, me
But
too.
just like you mentioned, Sabina, it's quite different what I do from the deep transformational work that the other ladies do. But what I picked up from Sashua that's very similar in what I do, looking at their sales, their marketing, all the A-type, businessy type things, is what is that domino effect? And if you can pick what that piece is, there is a solid domino effect that comes from it. And one of the very common things that I find with a lot of businesses comes down to their pricing and how they're pricing their services. And it's probably one of those very early, consistent ones where from the get go, because the thing is about marketing, it's like you can market your services how it stands today. But if you're currently underselling yourself, underpricing your services, you can get lots of new clients, but you're going to be doing yourself a disservice because you could have been charging more, possibly doing your clients a disservice because they might not be taking that service seriously as they could or should. There's a lot of different factors that come into pricing. But I know with several of my different clients, when we've increased their prices, which I think 9 times out of 10 will do with most businesses, and I think it's just that external person to look and see, well, what are you selling? What's the value here? Who is it for? What's the impact it's going to have for them? Kind of looking at all the different variables and then almost using that as evidence to say, well, I think you should be pricing it over here and giving them all the reasons, the justification for it, and then watching them actually go and sell that and say that price to someone and then their client say yes to it. It's just that big domino effect. It's like, if I can do that, imagine what else I could do. And maybe I only need to sell to half as many people as I thought before because I've increased my prices. So there's some of the things that I would look at. And I guess some of those underlying areas, it's not just about new marketing or more marketing out there in the world. It's also kind of looking at inside your business, what's going on as well.
Shannon, there's a lot of people that are very, very fearful of increasing their prices.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, they think that people will say no. And second of all, they don't think they're worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you stage that? How do you get people to go, okay, I can actually take that step to increase my price from 5,000 to 6,000 or whatever it might happen to be? Is it practice? Is it, you know, what actually is it?
Yeah, it's a combination. I think first and foremost, it's having a look at what you're selling and almost justifying the value that's in it, like seeing it on a page. What is that value of the service that you're offering? And also yourself as that business, all your IP, anything that you've studied, all that upskilling you've done, you know, the time in business, like everything, almost like value stack, everything that's led you to putting that service or that package together. And I think I actually don't think I've come across anyone who then looks at their, I guess, their IP and their assets and say, you know what? Yeah, I shouldn't increase my prices. They see that they definitely should. So I find pretty much everyone, once you kind of present that to them and say, here's who you are, basically, like on a page, or here's that mirror, they're much more attuned to increasing those prices. So that's only one step though, because when you've got that customer, you're talking to them and not to me. That can be a different story. So when it comes to their sales conversations or something like that, that's probably more some sales training and guiding them through how to have those healthy sales conversations that don't feel salesy. But to the part of your question around, do you do it from 5 to 6,000? Do you do it incrementally or do you do in bigger leaps and bounds? I find it's both. And it could be for different people. Some people want to do just incremental increases. Some people are just ready to jump to some of those more bigger ones. And for different phases in time for someone. So one person might say, okay, I'll do a big increase now, or a bigger increase than I would like to. And then over 6 or 12 months, I might incrementally start to increase that. So I think if people know, you can do it both ways. You can do incremental, but you could also do bigger jumps of increases. But again, it's got to come back to the value of that service you're offering, who you're helping, and all those kind of things. You can't just do it because someone told you to add an extra digit to your services.
Very practical and very detailed, isn't it? Karen, do you come across this as well a lot, that you find that people undersell themselves?
I guess the easiest way to answer that question is to perhaps switch hats. As well as running Financial Superwoman, I am an accountant. So I see business owners from that side. And I'm a little bit different to a lot of accountants, and I actually enjoy networking and I enjoy making connections, etc., etc. And so I would say to people that if you were looking to get some additional confidence in the ability to grow your business further, I would say do some networking, create some really genuine relationships. Because when you've got genuine relationships and you've got your branding, you've got your own personal branding, you've got your business branded, then people do business with people they trust. And so building up those connections through networking and developing that know, like, and trust is something that I think is really valuable. If I switch my hat back, that's something that I guess we're trying to work on with the women that come to our workshops. A lot of the women that are in our workshops probably haven't had a job for many years, or are not in a position to be in a job because they find themselves as a single parent. So they are often relying on, the support from the government to keep them going. So we, a lot of the time, work more on making sure they get the most out of the money that they have got, and perhaps start them on small steps so that they can be in a position to possibly own a home or buy an apartment or something like that further down the track. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. I have a quote here that I found. It is, lean in, speak out, have a voice in your organisation, and never use the word sorry. Angela, what are your thoughts on that? I know what I felt when I first read that. Angela, what are your thoughts on that? What's your immediate reaction to that?
Well, I especially think never use the word sorry. I think that's a big, confidence sapper. And because, lots of people that don't have confidence, or women, we feel we're an apology and we're always saying sorry. And so it's a great training to get rid of the sorry, and we're not an apology. And
is it a matter of learning when the right time is to say sorry?
Yeah, well, it's like if you go to the super, like it's sort of, I mean, there's a time and a place to say sorry, right? Like if you've stuffed up and you've hurt someone's feelings, or you've done something that you regret, obviously we're not talking about that. Well, that's not what I hear when you say that quote. So that quote means, let's, as Sashua says, make that bubble bigger. It's like a big bubble that doesn't apologize for our own existence. Because if women are disempowered, it's very, and I know that, like, even when I was working with the woman that I shared before, like, she would feel, bad about taking up my time. And women that have come into our sessions that she simply impacts, that really can't believe that what we're offering and the value that's actually in our community, and that they're sort of like, can't believe it, and they feel apologetic, and guilty. And it's like, this is what we're doing this because we want to do it. So.
Sure. Okay, let's talk about guilt. Sashua, Your client with the bubble, do you feel that she had any guilt?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like letting go of guilt is a process. It's not a switch, in my opinion. And it does take time for us to really let go of a lot of the conditioning and the programming that we can take on that brings us to that feeling of guilt, because we feel like we're doing something wrong by someone else and that their needs are more important than ours. And, there's so many levels to that, whether it's education or our beliefs and religions and things as we were upgrowing, or just simply how our parents taught us and how their parents taught them. There can be many, many levels to that. So, yes, she did start to feel that, but also we worked through that as well. So she could tune into more of her own value, more of her own true essence of who she was, so that she could stand in the truth of knowing that she had a place in this world and she deserved to create a life that she loved. And that's certainly a process. I think just to build on what Angela was sharing around that quote, to me, that quote can ignite a number of reactions. It could be some people might be quite empowered by that. Yeah, right, I'm finally going to break out of my shell and I'm going to go for it. Some people really resonate with that kind of approach, whereas other people could be quite confronted by it and think, well, I don't really want to go out and force myself into the world. I just want to be me. I just want to be comfortable in my own skin. You know what I mean? And not feel guilty for that. Because guilt has so many implications of I'm doing wrong by others, I don't deserve it myself. There's lots of layers to that. So that's why I always dive into, it's not just about how we are in our outer world and how we're showing up and how we're interacting with one another. It's that inner world, and then even deeper than that, which is the work that I do, is that soulful world, to empower all of those. It's almost like a underlying foundation that at some point we may well feel empowered to say, lean in, give it a good shot, see how you can go, and not feel guilty, feel quite unapologetic about bringing our true essence out into the world. And that's actually part of what I'm starting to do now is create that space for people to become what I call a magnetic speaker, to bring out that inner presence, because it empowers and fuels everything we do.
I have another quote here that I think probably sums that up, and that's, the question isn't who is going to let me, it's who is going to stop me. I thought that was a pretty powerful quote.
Very powerful.
Karen, when someone comes to you and they leave with their confidence built up, do you have a process for making sure that that stays with them, or that they continue to live their life full of confidence and they continue to grow? What's the next stage after working with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we allow the participants to take away all of our contact details. So we want them to continue to feel supported in their journey. We do leave the onus on them to come back to us. I made that mistake after the very first workshop when I said, would you like us to be in touch? And they all said yes. And then we all played a whole lot of telephone tag and never managed to talk to anybody. So I have learnt that one. But yes, we want them to feel that it's not just a day where we just, blast a whole lot of information at them and say, there you go, good luck, on your own, off you go. No, not at all, which is what communities are about. We want to continue to support them. They're welcome to come back time and time again, and they reach out to any of us as they need further support, or they've forgotten something that was said to them on the day, because often it's a lot of information and they won't remember it all. And as much as they take notes, it might still not all sink in. So we just continue to support them as they need it, but it's driven by them back to us.
Do you have some tips that you leave them with that you can share with us?
Well, it's really, I guess the tips are individualized depending on what their situation is. They get to share their level of story that they want to share and the the position, I guess, that they feel that they're in, and then the different experts, whether it's the money coach or whether it's the property manager helping them to get into a rental home, or whether it's the accountant because they're starting to work on starting a business, or someone like Angela when she's there as a business coach. So it really is up to that individual situation as to what sort of tips they get left with. But again, we're there to continue to support them as much as they need it. Yeah.
Right. Shannon, work-life balance. Is there such a thing?
I would like to know. I think the best way I hear people talk about work-life balance is probably more work-life harmony. It's that there's probably, like, I'm someone who really works to seasons, and just behind the scenes context, I've been a single mum for a very long time. So I understand the bigger balls and sometimes how it can be really difficult to, I know how to work. I don't know how to do sometimes more of the other activities. But I'm very much a seasonal person. So there might be times where I want to work a bit harder, or I know when my daughter was going from primary school to high school, I kind of looked ahead and thought, well, I want to make sure I'm there for her if and whatever happens in that transition. So I kind of dialed back my work a little bit more and kind of just made myself a bit more available if in anything, you know, you kind of want to be there as they go through that big life change. So to me, it's a lot around operating around the different seasons that I feel that I'm in or going into or coming out of. And that's probably how I navigate that work-life balance or that work-life harmony. And sometimes it's based on my goals. Sometimes it's based on circumstances like child going from primary school to high school. Could be health things or family things. It just really depends on what my focuses are at that period of time. And then I'll try to match everything to that. And there's been times where I'll focus on my health more than work. But I think the idea for me, what I find is when I have focused on my health more, it's to become a habit for future. It's not like I worked on my health for 6 months and that was like a nice 6-month period. It's that I can carry that forward. So into the future, I've got some good daily walking habits or something like that. So yeah, that's kind of how I navigate the work-life balance.
So when you as a single mother, there's nobody else that will help you with income. When you talk about stepping back, because you may want to be there for your daughter, pick her up from school, take her to activities, and you have to step back from business. How do you manage that? Because I'm guessing there possibly is income that you need to forego as well. How do you fit all that into work-life balance? You know, or do you let the income go? Are you at peace with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we all need a certain amount of income in order to afford our lifestyles and things like that. And this is where I think when it comes to, this is why I think everything's very holistic. So if you are running a business, as much as you're selling a service or products and things like that, it also has to serve you. So you might say, okay, when you're doing your business planning, I want to work X number of hours with X number of clients. And for me to sustain my business expenses and my personal expenses, I need to be earning this amount. So if there's a difference between maybe it's 5 clients at $2,000 a month, for example, how do I bring $2,000 of value per client and make sure it's almost like it all has to kind of fit in? So I kind of see it as if that's what you require financially, how can you make that? I think it really comes down to asking the right questions. So I think most people wouldn't want to forgo income, and I wouldn't want to either. I rather look at it and say, well, how could I do this? If I could change things, am I taking on more clients or working one-to-many or increasing my prices or doing something differently? I kind of like to look at it and say, like a bit of a puzzle, how could I figure this out to work how I want it to work, as well as for the people that are part of that, whether it's my child, my clients, my virtual assistant, or all the people that are involved in the scenario.
Wow, Shannon, I think there was a lot of gold in that. I think those questions were amazing. Angela, talking about work-life balance, you have the I guess, the extreme opposite end of what most people do. I know that you meditate for several hours a day in order to maintain your emotional balance, your work-life balance. That's you. What is your advice to others then? How do you get them to achieve work-life balance?
It's interesting that you asked that, because I was having this exact same conversation with one of my coaching clients this week, and he's a musician, and he is, we've really worked out that he needs to have one day off a week, that he needs a morning routine. But because he works night shift, what happens is he often sacrifices his morning routine because he's slept in, because he's been playing a gig, and then he's sort of thrust into there's no time for himself. And so what we've sort of came up with, some strategies for him, was that it's almost like an all-day breakfast. So it doesn't matter what time he wakes up, he's got these non-negotiables that form part of the morning routine, but they may not happen in the morning. They might happen, whenever he wakes up, basically. But there's certain things he needs to do for himself. And I think that applies to all of us, men and women, that there's these non-negotiables. And today I was also in another coaching session with a client, and one of her, we worked out a non-negotiable for her. So there's no one size fits all, is what I'm trying to say. So there's no one size fits all. It just depends on what your non-negotiables are. The things that we need to protect are our mental health, our inspiration, and there was one other thing, and I've forgotten what that is just right now, but it'll come to me in a minute.
Belief, self-belief, does it have anything to do with that?
It was our, obviously self-belief, permission, self-permission. It's like we have to, but and that's something else. It'll come back.
I was just reading a piece that you wrote that was purely around work-life balance, and one of the things in there was without compromising self-belief. That's why I brought that up. So let's talk about that then. How do those two fit together, Angela? Work-life balance and managing the personal and professional life effectively without compromising self-belief. Do those two come into play?
Well,
Is self-belief part of it?
Well, I think self-belief, it's kind of like self-permission, self-belief, self-leadership. It sort of goes at the foundation. It's like the self-awareness. It's like, who am I? Who am I not? And what do I need? And what are my non-negotiables? So I know what mine are. I've worked it out finally, after many years. So those are my non-negotiables. So there's a hierarchy of values. And so I know what the hierarchy of values is. So if something has to slip, I know what's going to slip. And it's not always going to be the meditation. It'll never be the meditation. Let me tell you that. That's never going to slip. As you know, Sabine, because it will never be my clients. If I've got, a client booked in, I'm never going to, or a session that I'm running. But, it's a juggling act.
Yeah.
That's why we work for ourselves, to design our own life and to live our non-negotiables, which, and I just know if I don't do it, I know what the consequences are, because I've learnt now.
Consequences. I had a conversation with a client this morning, and it was all about consequences and boundaries. And we realized that she needed to set boundaries in order to be able to move on, in order to be able to find herself some time. She's working herself into the ground. Sashua, talk to us about boundaries. We've talked about the aura or the bubble. Talk to us about boundaries. How important are boundaries when we talk about self-confidence and having time to self and, being the person that we know we can be?
Boundaries are hugely important, one of my favorite subjects to talk about, because it really can dictate our experience of life in so many ways. And it's interesting, I've found over years of working with clients, just the different understanding people can have about boundaries. Some see it as a level of protection, a buffer. Some see it actually as a disconnection, which I found quite interesting. I'm putting up a boundary to allowing something. So I think we can all look at boundaries in slightly different ways, but boundaries can be such an important mechanism to be able to feel safe and confident within ourselves, so that we are coming to every situation on our terms, how it feels comfortable for us, how it feels solid for us, how we can feel in harmony with our decisions and how we want to take ourselves through life. So sometimes we will require to have more robust boundaries in place when we feel like they're being infiltrated by something or someone. And sometimes we will want to expand our boundaries so we don't feel so confined and locked in the life that we've created. So there's many levels I feel that we can talk about boundaries from, and that buffer technique is a good physical way to do it. But also it's about respecting ourselves enough to ask the question of what sort of limits are we going to put to our relationships and conversations that we have, and what we're willing to kind of work with and work around versus what is so integral to our being that there is no compromise. And I feel like we're making decisions around that every day. From an energy point of view too, just quickly, is understanding that we're talking about work-life balance and how our boundaries can fit into that, is that if we can do some, what I would call energy maintenance, so that beyond these beautiful morning routines and the seasonal element that Shannon was talking about as well, is that there's also an energy maintenance that we can go through. If we have had a very energy depleting conversation with someone, what do we need to do to change the energy, to break out of that and move on so that we can reclaim the energy back to us and keep moving on in our day? How do we actually let go of all the grubbiness and the dirt that we've accumulated throughout the day? So when we go to bed at night, how do we let go of all of that that's kind of creeped into the leaks and the gaps in our boundaries? And how can we therefore seal those boundaries up when we do feel like they're being infiltrated? Because we, thankfully, graciously, are in control of all of that. We have the power to control all of that, which is why I believe the energy work can be so powerful, because it transcends the mind, it transcends thinking, and it taps us into a power that's beyond us. So there are great techniques we can do to literally seal the cracks in our boundaries that serve us and push out the boundaries that keep us limited. And that just adds and opens to such an ease in life. And from there, we just naturally build confidence. It's not something we have to try and do. It's just there, because life starts to feel so much more easeful.
I love that. Karen, let's talk about leadership. Does that conversation come up with you and your clients?
Yeah, most definitely. I guess for the participants who are attending our workshops, they want to break the cycle that they found themselves in, predominantly because they're probably mothers. They want to make sure that the history is not repeated. And so I see that as leadership, because they are making the right decisions so that there is a great example of how they are behaving, how they are presenting themselves to their children, so that the cycle is broken. So I think leadership is really important. Yeah.
Wow, you certainly have to have a confidence to be able to step into that, don't you? That's amazing for you to be able to get them there. Great. I love it. Thank you. Angela, leadership. Tell me about leadership. What does leadership mean to you? How does confidence support leadership?
Definitely. I think leadership and confidence are very intertwined. I think it's like stepping into leadership is the best way to grow confidence. So I think there's this relationship between confidence and leadership. I think that leadership is something that grows if it's a skill set. It grows, and and it can be frightening initially. I know from my own experience of when I was launching She Simply Impacts and how out of my comfort zone I was, and sometimes still am. And so leadership, but in its fundamental definition, to me, leadership is enabling others. So it's enabling myself. So it's taking risks, stepping out of my comfort zone, following my truth, and it's also enabling all my clients, so I do a lot of confidence building in all the work I do, personal branding, and all my, even in my business coaching, there's a lot of confidence building. So it's a lot of self-leadership.
Thank you. Shannon, do you believe everyone is a leader?
Yes, I think we all have it in us to be a leader. And I say it from personal experience because I would never have considered myself someone with leadership qualities and things like that. But Angela in particular is often being an advocate for me and reiterating that leadership quality I have developed. I feel like I definitely, like any of us, I think we don't have the skills we have today as we did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I think I do believe everyone has that leadership within them and they can keep developing that.
Thank you. Sashua, how does leadership come into your conversation with your clients?
It's a big element of it, Sabina, because self-leadership is really fundamental to how we navigate our life, whether we're going to show up for ourselves and what steps we're actually willing to take, and whether we know when to ask for help and get guidance when we need it. That's all part of leadership as well. And I feel like where the possibilities are when we start to gain some momentum in our self-leadership, we can even start to open the conversation of, well, how can I feel more what I like to call purpose pulled in our life? So our leadership gets to step up to a whole nother level, because part of our healing is not just healing ourselves, but when we start to gain some momentum, some of us quite often find that natural cause and calling to step in and help others. And so to step into that self-leadership, gain the momentum, feel that purpose-pulled, lovely feeling that almost elevates us into a whole new stratosphere of leadership, our confidence naturally expands because we're feeling the echo back from so many different situations, people, environments in that way. So I believe self-leadership has the capacity to lead us into a very purpose-pulled existence.
Guys, we've been going for over an hour now. We've talked about confidence, we've talked about boundaries, we've talked about work-life balance, we've talked about leadership. And I think everything that we've talked about, to me, says that we can all build our confidence. We just need to understand where we are now and where it is that we want to go and what it is that we need to do to get there. But we all have the capacity to be leaders. Do you guys want to add something to finish off this discussion here? Karen, do you have any final words at all?
I guess my final word would be to come back to the very beginning, which was community. And when you have a community, a supportive community around you, then all those elements are going to grow for you in your life. That's what I believe. You're going to end up with the confidence. You're going to gain the knowledge, get the confidence, and the leadership come from that too. So yeah, my big takeaway is community is so relevant in all of this.
Great. Thank you. Shannon.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, if there were to be a takeaway around any of the topics we spoke about, confidence, leadership, community, I think it's about finding our individualized personal way to doing that. And it's never the exact same as someone else, or maybe it's some of those things and something from here, but almost like take your way forward, because that's probably the way that it will stick and probably the way you can best develop any of those skills. So what's your own leadership style? What's your own, how do you want to develop your confidence? And I think that's what makes us all unique. And I think that gives us all our own superpowers as well.
Thank you. Sashua, would you like to add anything as a final word or takeaways?
When you asked the question, Sabina, the final word that came to me was allow. And it's really allowing for our own evolvement. I think sometimes when we lack confidence, we can be very fixed and confined and almost like our energy is quite concrete. If we can relax that a little and allow, because we naturally want to step into a better version of ourselves. If we can relax that confinement and allow for our evolvement to naturally happen, confidence is a consequence.
Love it. Angela, final words.
Final words. I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for coming. And I think it was an interesting discussion. And I'd love to also hear about what if our guests have any questions, if we have a couple of minutes just to even share your key takeaways from the discussion, and then we can sort of close up and wrap up. But I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Sabina. Isn't she amazing? She's an incredible facilitator, and we're very lucky to have her. And of course, you know, She Simply Impacts is a community. We offer, you know, live group coaching and transformational events. And, you know, Sabina, Shannon, myself, Sashua, we're all experts on the platform. So would either Natasha, Hayley or Faizi like to share your key takeaways before we close off?
Hi. Natasha, go for it.
I don't have my headset on. I was like, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all good.
Thank you for that. I made some notes as I was listening, just sort of reflecting on just in terms of what helps me with my confidence. And I've always sort of been someone that needs a community, and I've been feeling quite isolated. So it's been really good sort of connecting with you all when I joined She Simply Impacts just a couple of months ago, I think it was. Yeah, so just being reminded of what I need to thrive, and just thinking about the really helpful sessions that I've had with people so far. It's been great. So thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Natasha. Faizi, Hayley, did you want to add anything? Faizi, yep.
Yep, I'd love to. Again, the same thing as what Natasha said. I joined Simply Impact. For some reason, I didn't even know why I joined it at the beginning, but I do believe in community support as well. And it's amazing how you can lose the plot sometimes and not realize why you've lost it. But when you are in a community, that confidence just comes back to you and just builds your confidence back again. And I love that part. And I love being in this community, although I sometimes miss situations because life is so busy. But I do love being part of it as well. And I'm very grateful that I joined. Angela, and you've done a good job. And thank you all, the panel. You've done an amazing job. And I'm sure we can take what we've learned to pass it on to others as well.
Thank you, Faizi. Love it. Look, I think I can speak for us all when I say that, you know, we've had some beautiful discussions here. I've got a lot out of it. We can find these discussions on the She Simply Impacts YouTube channel. Links to anything that we're referred to will be in the description below. So go forth and enjoy. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thanks a lot.
Amazing.
Bye,
Thanks, everybody.
See you
Bye
later.
for now.
Bye.